you're kind of starting a new season, obviously. Tell us about last year and how the tournament season went last year for you.
Started off good and went downhill from there. Basically, first tournament of the year last year was right down the road from me on Detroit River. It's kind of a crazy event. They put it at the tail end of March, which is it's kind of pushing it up here in the north, right? We were pre-fishing through ice and sub-freezing temperatures. So, which during the week we had fairly good conditions as far as water clarity, but what happened the day that the tournament was supposed to happen, I think we had 40-mile-an-hour winds, so they even canceled a tournament on the river just because the water temperatures were like 36 degrees. So anybody getting knocked out of a boat wouldn't have been too good for too long. But did okay in that one, and then really tried to stay up there in the top and kind of swung for the fences. You know, the old cliche at the next one, and that pretty much set the dominoes in motion for a bad season. You can't with these guys in this tour. I fished the National Walleye Tour. You can't really have a bad tournament and hope to do well for Angler of the Year. And it did all right through the rest of it, but definitely that was a tough one. That was in Chamberlain, South Dakota. So left little fish to go find big fish and caught no fish, and just put one in the box the first day, and then just went and beat up on some fish the second day where I should have stayed all the first day. So, but all in all, it was one of those seasons where you learn from, right? You kind of just you have to take each event and kind of do your post-mortem on it and go, what went well, what didn't go well, and definitely a good learning experience for me.
So it's going to be a bounce back year for you here in 2023. Appreciate you coming on, Ed. And today we're going to talk about crankbaits for walleyes. And when we start talking about stuff like this, to me, the first question as an angler when you're thinking about this stuff is the why. So let's start off with that, and that's why crankbaits for walleyes? What do you like about them? What's the advantage to using?
Yeah, I think what's nice about all artificial lures and crankbaits fall into that category for sure. It's about efficiency, right? Versus live bait, you're going to be able to keep a bait in the water longer. And I think what's nice about crankbaits, mainly we're using them trolling. There are some applications where we're casting them too, but you're kind of hitting on like all the senses of any fish with a crankbait. You're gonna get the visual with it for sure when they're gonna be able to see it from a mile away if you're using a bright color like this. But if you're gonna go to something that's more natural, like this Walleye Nation, this is one of their custom ones. It looks like a little white bass, but depending on water clarity, right, you're gonna move to different color patterns and where you're fishing and all that good stuff. But then a lot of them, I don't know if you can hear it real good, but rattles, right? So that's sending out some sound vibrations, the vibration of the bait. We'll talk a little bit about pitch and yaw and roll and all those good things that are some triggering things that crankbaits have. But speed too. If you're properly tuned, we'll talk a little bit about tuning. I mean, you're fishing crankbaits up to like 4 miles an hour for a walleye. A lot of guys think the walleye won't move real fast, but depending on water temperature, when you get in the summer when they start to spread out real far, you can really crank up the speed on them, and there's triggering mechanisms to speed and talk a little bit about that. But I love artificial baits, right? I don't have to go to the bait shop. There's nothing wrong with going to a bait shop, but it's I'm on the water, I'm fishing, and say I'm trolling and I see a pullback and I don't get a fish, I don't hook up on it in that rare instance. I don't have to do anything, right? I can keep that bait in the water and keep fishing, right? I'm not having to pull up and see like, hey, I got a short strike and do I still have a minnow or a crawler or a leech or whatever on that bait. I'm not waiting for them to take that bait. As soon as I see any indication of a strike, I can take all the slack out of the line if I'm trolling and put tension on it and kind of bury those treble hooks on it. And one other thing, right? There's even on something like this, Walleye Nation Reaper, I've got 6 hook points. When they come after this thing, they got a really good chance of getting hooked, right? So we can talk about specifics on different aspects of crankbaits, like why to choose and how to choose which one you're going to run when. If you're ready to get in that, I can start on that. So.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and fire away? I've got a couple follow-up questions after that, but if that's kind of where your mind's going, let's go there.
Yeah, sounds good. Crankbaits for walleye, I mean, you can get into such drastic sizes. These 4-inch crankbaits like a Reaper, deep diving bill. You're going to pull this thing. You can run it as high as 5 feet in the water column, all the way down into 25 plus feet unassisted with a snap weight or weighted line. You're going to get even deeper down there, but I mean, any part of the water column you can get there with. And then you get into all the way in the other end of the spectrum, right? It's a small, like boogie shad like this, a little tiny bait. Well, why this versus this, and when and where? It's really dependent on like the forage base for the walleye in that system. And then the other part, is about what action that bait's putting on. Some of that more, let's say, drastic seeking action at higher speeds, and even depending on the crankbait that you're using, you're going to get more hookups, especially when the fish are more active. That seeking or really erratic movement is going to cause them to trigger on it quite a bit more often than, say, something that has kind of a slower, tighter wobble. One thing to look at, a bill like this shape on it, right? I'm going to get a lot more side-to-side movement on something like that versus, we got so many crankbaits in front of me. Let me pull a different one. Something with like a square bill on it, but then you get a smaller bill on something like this with square bill. I'll still get some side to side, but not as much. One common thing we've seen kind of across the board, holds true for walleye crankbaits, less for guys that are going to fish bass and things like that. But is roll of the bait. So, you've got that side to side action, and then you've got the angle that's coming through the water. You got your period, and then you got your roll. So what you're going to see on any good walleye bait, you're going to see some side to side roll like this, where the bait is kind of flashing its sides. It's doing two things, right? It's putting a certain vibration out in the water, but it's also giving that kind of illusion of like they're seeing all the colors on that bait. So they're going to see not just the bottom or the side, and you're typically fishing over the head of walleye, not right in their face when you're fishing. There are some rules of thumb, like you're going to have to get a lot closer to them when they're in a negative move or the water's cold. So you might actually be fishing right in the same depth as them. But if the water's clear, I'm running crankbaits sometimes 8 feet over their head, and that's a triggering mechanism too. Once they commit that energy, they expend that energy to go up and look at that thing, they're going to strike after it. So, and I did mention speed. One thing important to note is like there really isn't too many bodies of water where there isn't some current there. So, having something where you're going to be able to see not only your speed over ground, but the speed that your lures being pulled through the water in, is really important, right? Fish Hawk does a great job of that. And the reason why it's important is if I'm going with the current and I'm pulling this like a bait, like a reaper, and I think I'm pulling at 1.8 miles an hour, but I'm going with a 1 mile an hour current and I'm only going 0.8. I'm not going to get the action out of it that I think I'm getting, right? And I'm not going to get the rattles aren't going to start to work. I'm not going to get the roll. I think I'm not going to get that hunting action of the bait moving, with the yaw and the pitch out of it. So I might even lose some of my depth that I thought I had if I'm running unassisted. So for everybody, unassisted just means I'm not using any type of snap weight in the system, and I'll be running deeper than I thought if I'm running assisted. So if I'm running either weighted line like lead core, I'm running a snap weight and I'm going with current, it's going to go deeper. Then flip that all around. If I'm going against current, right, I'm going to get a lot wilder action out of the bait. I might be, higher in the water column than I thought I was going to be when I'm assisted with a weight, with a snap weight, or definitely, deeper. If just really depends on which way that current's going, and really that can affect a lot. So you hear guys, I got them going this direction, but I didn't go in that direction. Well, usually the reason for that is just not being cognizant of the current that's down there.
Vince, you got a question for Ed before we wrap up here?
I was just going to ask Ed, those fish you're after in the Detroit River, are those migratory fish or are they residents of Detroit River?
Typically like in the early spring, what's gonna rule the system are the migratory fish, right? And we got them coming from both directions. There's fish swimming downstream to swim through the Detroit River to go swim into Lake Erie and then swim into tributaries all the way to Maumee River. And we got fish coming the other direction from Lake Erie into the river to spawn. We do have resident fish, but those typically, like if you're in a tournament, they're not the ones that are going to win it for you. But there's fish in there all season long. There's definitely resident fish, and there was even migratory fish showing up late fall last year that are just staging there because there's enough bait there, right? So long as there's enough bait in the system, they're going to kind of come in there and hang out a little longer than they would typically. So yeah, I like to target the migratory fish, and if I'm in a tournament, if it's a weight tournament, the migratory fish that haven't spawned yet, if I can find those, right, ones with eggs in them.
So if I was going to add one more question, I don't know how much time we have, but that probably the people watching would want to know is spring walleye are a lot of times associated with jigging. When do you decide when you're going to attack that way or when you're going to troll crankbaits?
In this area, what usually is the tipping point is water clarity, right? If that water is gin clear to say, just mildly stained, a jig is going to work pretty good. Once it dirties up, from that, let's say a foot of visibility or under, that the rattles of a crankbait, the vibration is going to be a lot more effective. And then, as the water temperature warms, I'm going to be pulling that crankbait even a little bit faster through that dirty water, so I'm going to cover more water. Then that progresses. Like the jigging bite in a lot of areas gets a little bit tougher when they start to spread out more because you're not fishing large groups of fish. You're fishing isolated fish that are scattered amongst, say open flats or even open water.
Very good, Ed. We got about 2 minutes. I want to just ask you real quick. You talked about tuning. Can you give us like a 2-minute seminar on basically how to tune those crankbaits before you set them down?
Yeah, everybody's got a pair of pliers in their boat. They make a few tools that do this. But when you put a crankbait in the water, some of them are going to come good out of the box, but they can become untuned, or some will have issues right out the gate. So what I like to do, you can do it anywhere, but like while you're trolling, if you want to check baits, I check them every time before I let them out. If you start to see when you put this bait in the water and you pull it and it runs a little far, right or a little far left or blows all the way out, you're going to take your pliers, grab not just that split ring, but you're going to grab that eye and you're going to bend it ever so slightly to try to get it back to center, right? Less is more in this situation. Yeah, you get crazy with it, you're going to wreck your bait, or it'll blow out the other way. You're going to give it a little tweak towards the other direction that you want it to run, and then pull it through the water again. The other thing to be aware of is I like to use a dual lock snap to connect to that split ring. If you tie directly, you can have some issues with tuning sometimes too, depending on the knot use. So just be aware that it isn't like binding when you do that. But there's not much to tuning, pull it as hard as you can forward. If it starts to blow out left or right, give it another adjustment. Keep adjusting a little bit. It goes a long way. And then when you can actually pull it through the water and it stays diving down true all the way, then send it back and let it go. But if it's off, two things are going to happen. You're not going to know, three things. You're not going to know where it's running in the water column when you look at an app like Precision Trolling. You're also, you're pulling it kind of in an odd way through the water. And you also have a chance for tangling in your mind, right?
Very good. Ed, really appreciate you stopping by and talking to us today. It was fun to have you on to talk just a little bit of crankbaits. I know it's 20 minutes. You probably could have talked 2 hours on this topic, but appreciate you coming in and give us a taste of what you've got going on. And good luck this year as you venture back out on the road and go chase down those walleyes.
I appreciate the time and have fun at the show there. Thanks.
Good luck, Ed.